It's good to see you today. Welcome back to another episode of The Liz Wheeler Show. So, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar was attacked during her monthly town hall meeting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And there's a big outstanding question about whether this attack was real or whether this attack was another Jussie Smollett. Was this a staged hoax? Was this a fake hate crime that had been that wasn't real? Is this fake news? Well, we're going to watch the video and we're going to analyze why people are asking this question. And I'm going to give you my take and I want to hear your opinion. This is what happened at her town hall meeting. She was in the middle of speaking at the podium. As you can see, we can roll this tape when a man from the front row jumped up and sprayed her. It seems like it was from a syringe with an unknown substance. Take a look.
Must resign or face impeachment.
The man jumps up, sprays her with a substance, and then Ilhan Omar rushes towards her attacker as her security rushes him to the ground.
Oh my God, he sprayed something on her.
I need a napkin to know nothing.
Ilhan Omar's security then tries to convince her to leave for her own safety. Obviously, she doesn't know what chemical agent was sprayed on her to go get that checked out, and she refuses. She is right now having to go to her security because he is trying to secure her.
That's whatever it is smells so bad. She needs to go get checked.
Someone, as you notice, notes that the substance squirted on Ilhan Omar smells very bad.
It's not about him. It's about your safety. No, he
Her
sprays.
staff also tries to convince her to leave, and she does not. She returns to the podium.
We're gonna keep talking. Just give me 10 minutes. Just give me 10 minutes. I beg you.
And she continued speaking.
Please don't let them have the show.
That is the C-SPAN footage of the attack against Ilhan Omar. The man who committed the attack, his name is Anthony Kazmarechek. He was charged immediately with third-degree assault and booked in the Hennepin County Jail, as he should be. He should be prosecuted immediately. If this attack is in fact a real attack, he should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Ilhan Omar, regardless of her absolutely horrendous political views and her questionable legal status here as a naturalized U.S. citizen, is a sitting member of the United States Congress. And this man, if he attacked her, should be held accountable. Likewise, he should be in jail either way. If this attack is a fake, he should be in jail for faking a hoax hate crime. Now, of course, people are saying that this is a fake. Why are people saying that this is a fake? I see you guys in the live chat. Almost everybody in the live chat right now is contending that it looked like a staged attack. This seems to be pretty widespread. Most people who watch this video have that initial reaction that there's something off about this video. And I've identified a couple of the elements that are leading us to believe that there's something off about this this so-called attack. The first thing is the man who committed the attack. He was sitting in the front row at the time, and he's visibly a weirdo. So we can look at this little video of him. Look at this guy. He is clearly under the influence of
round of applause for
something.
Congresswoman Omar's staff who's
I mean,
here.
looks
hi everyone.
like
I'm
a
Hennepin-
cartoon in a sense. He looks like he either drunk or under the influence of some kind of drugs. That's not normal behavior. He almost looks like a sitcom character that's supposed to be visibly, obviously intoxicated in some way. It would not be typical at a political event such as this one, a town hall event for a sitting member of the U.S. Congress. If there's a weirdo seated in the front row, the security moves the weirdo. That's standard procedure at almost every type of event, whether it's a congresswoman, whether it is, just another political gathering. It's not typical to allow a weirdo that is so visibly, obviously a weirdo to be in the front row. Now, it's also interesting to note, and this is sort of the why would Ilhan Omar staged this if this was fake. It's interesting to note that he jumped up right after Ilhan Omar said that Kristi Noem must resign. Those were the first words when we played that video clip for you a moment ago that was pulled right from C-SPAN. And she was saying Noem must resign. And it was as if that was his cue, as if that was the way that he knew that now is my time to act. He jumped up right after Ilhan Omar said Kristi Noem must resign, which of course makes you wonder, is this some kind of stage hoax hate crime in order to protect Ilhan Omar from any kind of enforcement of her questionable immigration activities? Well, that, of course, is not all. There's also a moment where it appears that Ilhan Omar gives him the head nod, like, go ahead. Let's take a look at this.
And round of applause for Congresswoman Omar's staff who's here. And round.
We're gonna bring up the fake head nod. Not the weirdo guy, the one where she nods to him as if she's giving him the cue to start.
Must resign or face impeachment. Must resign or face impeachment.
Okay, so I gotta tell you, when I first saw this video, I was trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. I was like, well, listen, maybe it looked as if her eyes jumped to him, looked like a nod, because maybe she saw him jump into action to attack her before we did, because she was facing him. And then I watched the video after, kind of coming at it with this generous point of view, trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. And I thought, no, she was not noting. It's not like he caught her eye and it looked like a nod. She gave him a nod as if to give him his cue. This is when you're supposed to attack me. It's weird looking. It's very odd. This is not what you would expect to see if this attack were not staged. Then, of course, when he does lunge at her and squirt this foul-smelling, unknown substance on her, she barely flinches, which is strange because how would you know? I mean, she didn't know, obviously, what was being squirted at her. She doesn't know, like, hey, is this a toxic poison chemical agent that's going to burn me? Is this something that's going to catch on fire? Is this something that's going to make me immediately ill? In fact, when he jumps at her, she probably doesn't even know that he's squirting a substance at her. She might think he has a firearm, and yet she barely reacts, barely flinches. And then instead of kind of the self-preservation, move away, she lurches towards him. Take a look at this.
Secretary Kristi Noem must resign or face impeachment.
She didn't even flinch. She was just like, and then she lurches towards him. I mean, come on.
I don't know.
Even a trained operator wouldn't lurch towards him in that way. That's really strange to me. It's also strange, by the way, that he didn't aim this substance at her face. He aimed it at her sweater, which would be seemingly harmless. Her reactions, I would say, are just very understated reactions. Very understated reactions. And then to decline to even test what this substance is or to go to the hospital and to continue speaking. It's a series. These are the reasons why. This is a catalog of the reasons why so many people are asking, is this an authentic attack or was this a staged attack? Is this Jussie Smollett 2.0? Well, my answer to that would be this. It's a good thing that he was arrested, because if it was a real attack, he deserves to be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And if it's a fake attack, if this was some kind of hoax hate crime, then he deserves to be prosecuted, investigated, prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And this arrest and investigation will easily determine whether or not this was real. There's also, of course, the left wants to use this to prop up Ilhan Omar's image and to vilify any supporters of President Trump or anybody who detracts from Ilhan Omar. And so they're, of course, saying this is some deranged mega attacker. Well, no, he's not mega. He has children. This is on his own social media profiles. He has children that use trans profiles, 2 daughters that have strange colored hair and are obviously leftist. You can see this in various posts around his social media. So no, he does not seem to be a Trump supporter, because even if he had different politics than his children, which is of course possible, you probably wouldn't be posting about your children in the way that he was if they had been captured by an ideology that you believe to be evil, harmful, and demonic. Similarly to how Elon Musk doesn't post pictures of his child, his son, who identifies as transgender. Now, of course, the actual reason that people like you and me are questioning whether this is real or not, it's not just because all the elements of this attack seem fake. It's because of Ilhan Omar's character. It would be perfectly in line with her character. It would be perfectly believable to think that Ilhan Omar staged something like this, because she's a fraud. She is a fraud related to so many different things. She's a fraud related to the marriage to her brother. She's a fraud related to her own naturalized citizenship. Like, we don't know whether this attack is a fake or not. Time will tell. But what we know for a fact is a fake is Ilhan Omar's citizenship status. She obtained naturalized U.S. citizenship because her father, Noor Omar Mohammed, claimed asylum on the basis that he said the Siad Barre regime, a violent Marxist regime in Somalia, was attempting to kill him and he was fleeing for his life. That's how he got asylum here, which is the basis for Ilhan Omar's naturalized citizenship. But the reality is, Omar's father lied. He wasn't fleeing the Siad Barre regime. He was a high-ranking military official in that regime. He was reportedly a colonel in that regime, probably specializing in propaganda. And the reason he feared for his life is because the people had just overthrown the violent Siad Barre regime and were holding accountable the vicious, violent officials that had served in that regime, like Omar's father. Because he neglected to mention that when he sought asylum in the United States, his asylum claim was fraud, which means that Ilhan Omar's naturalized citizenship status is invalid, completely invalid. Not to mention the reality that Ilhan Omar must have known about the extent of Somali fraud in Minnesota. She was pictured with people who were involved in this fraud. The idea that this attack of Ilhan Omar appears to have elements that make us question whether it was staged or not, whether it was a hoax or not, is perfectly in alignment with Ilhan Omar's character. Period. Now, of course, the person who has the best instinct on the planet, President Trump, was asked to weigh in whether he thought that what he thought. It was an open-ended question, what he thought of this Ilhan Omar attack. And this is what reporter Rachel Scott said. She said, just spoke to President Trump. I asked him if he had seen the video of Congresswoman Omar being attacked and sprayed by a substance. The president said, quote, no, I don't think about her. I think she's a fraud. I really don't think about that. She probably had herself sprayed, knowing her, the president said. I asked again if he had seen the video, Rachel Scott said. The president said, I haven't seen it. No, I hope I don't have to bother. Imagine having the political gestalt to predict that she probably faked it without even seeing the video. This is why President Trump is unparalleled. Unparalleled gut instinct in this man to note that it was probably a hoax hate crime just based on who was involved without even seeing the video and seeing all the elements of it that made us suspicious after we had watched it. Unbelievable. Okay. I have a very special guest on the show today because when we've been talking all week about the Alex Petty shooting and about this coordinated criminal organization or apparatus, you could call it, in Minneapolis specifically, that these aren't peaceful protesters. They are well-funded, well-organized apparatuses of not just political resistance, but interference with law enforcement actors. It is a criminal. They have criminal goals to impede law enforcement, to enforcing the immigration laws that are on our book. My next guest wrote a book, which I highly recommend. I have read every single one of his books, and barring none, they are absolutely outstanding. And everything that he predicts in his books, not only is he an accurate reporter, everything that he talks about in his books, he's ahead of his own time, because months later, what he reported in his books becomes the story. One of the most powerful independent journalists out there. It's Peter Schweizer. His new book, The Invisible Coup, How American Elites and Foreign Powers Use Immigration as a Weapon, joins us right now. Peter, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, great to be with you. Thanks for having me, Liz.
All right, Peter, your book is outstanding. I've read all your books. You know, we've talked about probably each one of your books as they've come out. I don't know how you time it, by the way. This book, the publication of this book was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. And it could not have been more perfect timing than to examine what is the undercurrent, this immigration plot that we all talk about, flooding welfare and creating, overrepresentation of Democrats in Congress and creating a permanent class of new Democrat voters. You dug into exactly who's pulling the strings and orchestrating this, and the book came out yesterday. So tell us what you found.
Yeah, what I found is that, we've had this great debate in our country, an important one about immigration as it relates to jobs, violence in our streets, American culture, hugely important. But I think we're missing the larger picture, which is the weaponization of immigration. And what do I mean by that? Foreign actors, that includes the government of China, the government of Mexico, the Muslim Brotherhood, see immigration as a weapon that they can deploy against the United States. And so when people come from overseas, they certainly bring themselves, their family, they bring their culture, but they also often bring political networks. And these are political networks that are antithetical to the United States. So these foreign powers view immigration very differently than we do. Let me just, if I could, Liz, read you two quotes These are from senior Mexican officials. It gives you an idea of their perspective on mass migration. The first one is from a government report in December of 2024 by one of President Sheinbaum's top aides. Quote, "We already know that the Mexican population in the United States reaches 39.9 million. We Mexicans are reclaiming our territory." Or this quote from a powerful senator. He's with the Morena party, the ruling party, and he's a member of the National Defense Committee, which is the most powerful committee in the Mexican Senate. He said just a couple of years ago on mass migration, quote, "Mexicans are in our territories: California, Nevada, Texas, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, Kansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Wyoming. We're going to take back the territory that was stolen from us." Now, you could just say this is bravado, but as I argue in the book, and I think there's lots of evidence, they actually are trying to back this up. And China has their own methodology, and the Muslim Brotherhood have their own methodology. And they're all united in this sense that immigration is a means to subvert the United States. Those are not my words. I actually quote these people as saying that themselves.
Yeah, the part that I found fascinating is the quotes from these high-ranking officials in Mexico specifically. You could write off as just like, oh, some radical politician thinks that we're at war with the United States because, they didn't want to give up Texas or California or Nevada. And yet what you uncovered specifically at the Mexican consulates, not only, it's a plot, it's an orchestrated apparatus to do exactly what that public official in Mexico is claiming. So it's not a one-off. And I want you to explain that. The Mexican consulate thing is crazy.
Yeah, it's really amazing, Liz. I was surprised at this because, look, I admit I had the view that I think a lot of people have is the Mexican government is corrupt and kind of hapless.
Yeah.
But the fact is, they actually have erected a remarkable infrastructure inside the United States that is designed to create what they call Greater Mexico. These portions of the United States. So the first one are the consulates. Mexico has this vast network in the United States. The United Kingdom and China have respectively 6 and 7 consulates in America. Mexico has 53. And these consulates, as I point out in the book, they're involved in, organizing and supporting these violent protests that are occurring across the United States. They were neck deep involved in what was happening in Los Angeles last year. There's also a consulate up in St. Paul, Minnesota, the Twin Cities, where we're seeing so much in Minneapolis. So they're involved in organizing those. And I quote officials and explain how they are perpetuating those. But they're also involved in electoral politics, which you are not supposed to be doing if you are a diplomat in our country. So, for example, at the end of May in 2024, there was a meeting at the Mexican consulate in Oklahoma City. And Liz, they brought diplomats, consular officials from the consulates from Los Angeles to Orlando, and pretty much everybody in between. They flew in officials, senior officials from Mexico City, from the foreign ministry, and they met with Democratic Party political activists. And the conversation was, we turned California from, red to blue. We turned Arizona from red to blue. How are we going to do that more in the United States so we can defeat Donald Trump? One of the officials said, Trump is going to learn that if you F around, you're going to find out. So there is absolutely no justification for Mexican diplomats to be involved in our politics. There are numerous other examples of things they're doing. So look, they're not performing a legitimate function. We need to look at closing some of these consulates because they are political activists. They're trying to extend the interests of Mexico into the United States. There's one other layer, if I could, Liz, to talk about, and that's that Mexico has created this really bizarre, this was shocking to me, this really bizarre network of elected officials. These are Mexican senators and members of the Mexican parliament who live in the United States. They serve
while
in
they're
the
elected
parliament.
officials in Mexico?
Yeah, they represent, they go
What?
and they meet in the Mexican Senate, they're senators, but they live in Los Angeles and they live in
What?
Arizona and they live in Illinois. And their job is to represent Mexicans inside the United States before the Mexican Senate. If that's not a subversion of your sovereignty, I don't know what is. And by the way, these guys are radicals. They are organizing protests. They say, they said during the Los Angeles riots, we are part of the permanent resistance. They say that Los Angeles was occupied territory, that it doesn't really belong to the United States. This is crazy. And so why we're allowing this to happen, I don't know. And I'm hoping that we're going to see some action from the Trump administration.
Yeah, this is completely bonkers. I mean, this is justification to close them all down and kick them all out, in my opinion. You mentioned the LA riots from last summer that were, the anti-ICE, supposedly. That's how they were billed. And yet we saw a bunch of foreign nationals wearing like terrorist kefias. And, we were told it was peaceful. And we saw an awful lot of cars burning and roadways being blocked and officers being assaulted and precinct windows being broken. So we can tell what's peaceful and what's not. When you say they were involved in this, what do you mean?
They organized the protests. They cheered them on. They spread the word on social media. There's one member of the Mexican Chamber of Deputies, basically their Congress, who lives in Los Angeles, who was posting on social media when they were shutting down highways, when they were disrupting and harassing cops. He was posting "Our race for our race." That's what he was saying. There's another Mexican deputy who lives in Ontario, California, which is just outside of Los Angeles, named Alejandro Robles. He is actually the representative for the Morena Party, the ruling party of Mexico in the United States. Last year, he was describing in detail to his colleagues back in Mexico, and I quote him extensively in the book, saying that he was going around the United States organizing the militancy. That's his words, organizing the militancy inside the United States, and said that we, meaning migrants, are on the front lines of the resistance to the Trump administration. So this is what they are saying, and this is frankly what they're doing. In the case of this guy who says he's part of the permanent resistance, he actually was in New York meeting with organizations that are directly tied to Antifa and plotting things that they could do together. So this all needs to be looked at. And yeah, people have a First Amendment right. If you're a foreign government official, I'm sorry, you do not have a right to do these things to try to cause chaos within the United States. That's why I think this needs serious investigation.
Well, nobody, even American citizens, has a First Amendment right to throw Molotov cocktails and assault police officers and break precinct windows either. That
Yeah.
is not peaceful protesting. That is not speech. And then, in addition, tell me a little bit about the indoctrination efforts to make sure that the Mexican nationals or naturalized citizens, even here in the United States of Mexican origin, believe that the United States is evil. They have pretty serious indoctrination efforts going on, to my understanding.
Yeah, that's right. So, we have a lot of migrant children in the United States that came over here during the Biden administration or before that. Parents are illegally in the country. They are enrolled in schools, from California to Florida. They're going to public schools, and the public schools have these students that don't speak English. So the Mexican government and consulates, out of the kindness of their hearts, donate about 1 million textbooks a year to school districts in the United States. And these are textbooks that these students are learning from in our public schools. We actually looked at those textbooks, and look, I get it. A lot of the textbooks in the United States for American kids are bad. These are 10 times worse. These talk about that the United States is the enemy. And that they have a totally different view of the Mexican-American War and about the territories of the American Southwest. They're radical Marxist textbooks that have been donated by these Mexican consulates. I don't know if the local school districts in Orlando or in Los Angeles are paying attention or not, but this is the kind of indoctrination that's taking place. One other thing they're doing, Liz, is, and then again, this is funded by the Mexican government. It is organized and managed by the Mexican government. In 2024, they created something called Migrante TV, Migrant TV. This is a video news streaming service that the Mexican government set up specifically for migrants living inside the United States. And it is a propaganda arm. So in 2024, they ran all these stories about Kamala Harris was like the perfect leader for America, and Donald Trump was this horrible fascist dictator. When Trump won in November, from then until now, it has been a constant stream about how ICE and federal law enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol are brown shirts and fascists. This is what the Mexican government is telling migrants that live inside the United States. Why we are allowing them to do this is I don't know. I just can't figure out why we're allowing them to do this, why this hasn't been raised and said, you need to shut this down. Stop spreading this hate and this propaganda inside the United States.
As you point out in your book as well, and you've been making this point for years actually, President Trump has a very powerful tool, almost an easy tool to encourage the Mexican government to comply because you can tell us the number for the past year, but the amount of money that Mexicans in the United States send to Mexico is absolutely astronomical.
Yeah, it's one of their biggest sources of income. It's 60 billion with a B dollars
Holy
every year.
cow.
Yeah, these remittances. So they like the remittances, but they also like the fact that they are extending what they say their sovereignty inside the United States. And they believe if the trends continue, that states like California and Arizona and New Mexico will effectively become, whether they actually become Mexican states or not is
Right.
another matter, but will effectively be run by them. And in fact, one of these migrant senators I was talking about, this is a Mexican senator who lives inside the United States in Arizona, Senator Ruiz. She's actually introduced legislation, supports legislation to make California a state of Mexico.
That
So
is so weird.
yeah, these are the ambitions they have, and this is not just delusion. This is real stuff.
Yeah, that is really scary. And President Trump, to my understanding, and certainly the United States Congress could do this if they wanted, although I don't have much faith in the United States Congress, they could control the amount of remittances that's allowed to flow into Mexico and the Mexican government. I mean, that's a pretty powerful tool that the Mexican government to use to coerce the Mexican government because they do rely on that. And I think you've been correct for a long time. You're one of the only people pointing that out. Talk to me about China and what they're doing to use immigration as a weapon.
Yeah, so China's methodology is different, as you might expect, Liz. It's very sophisticated, and it is their manipulation of so-called birthright citizenship in the United States. As you know, the Supreme Court's going to hear this case this spring. Birthright citizenship is the idea that, according to the 14th Amendment, the claim is if you happen to be in the United States and you're a woman that gives birth to a child, by virtue of being inside the United States, that child is granted automatic citizenship. And the problem is, Liz, we in the United States have zero idea how many babies have been granted citizenship this way because the birth
Yeah.
certificates that are issued don't list the nationality of the parents. So if you ask Department of Homeland Security, you ask any of the federal agencies, they will tell you we have zero idea how many babies are being born. Well, the Chinese government has looked at this and they have numbers and they are eye-popping. And just a little bit of background, the Chinese government, beginning in 2011, started running articles in the People's Daily. I quote them in the book, where they're telling Chinese elites, hey, if you travel to the United States with your pregnant wife, she gives birth in the United States, your child is going to get U.S. citizenship.
That's
They were
crazy.
encouraging this. They were disclosing this. And there's a massive industry in China open in the public. They advertise all over Chinese social media saying, if you pay us $50,000, $60,000, we will take care of you. We'll fly you to the United States. We'll get you through customs. We'll arrange medical care. We'll get an apartment for you to stay in. Your child will be born. When your child's ready to travel, we'll get you back to China. So they've done this. So how many people are we talking about?
Yeah, what kind of
It-
numbers are we talking about here? Because I've heard of isolated incidents of this, kind of like the birth tourism, but what is the
Yep.
actual number?
Well, it's massive. It's like spring break tourism. The Chinese government says that every year for the past 13 years, every single year, roughly 100,000 Chinese babies have been born in the United
What?
States. That's the Chinese government estimate. So do the math. That's 1 million
Oh my word.
Chinese babies that were born in the United States who are taken back to China by their parents, raised in the CCP system. And by the way, when they turn 18, they're going to be able to vote in our elections. They're U.S. citizens. They're going to be able to donate to political campaigns. They're going to be able to apply for sensitive government jobs. And let's remember that 2016 presidential election, Trump, Hillary Clinton, it was settled by like 72,000 votes. So this is a massive vulnerability.
A
And this
million
wave is
new
gonna start
voters?
cresting. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mind is blown here. My mind, a million new voters that are essentially Chinese communists. I mean, it's not like they're going to vote. It's not like they're going to vote for Trump. It's not like they're going to vote the way that they want to. They're going to vote the way that the Chinese Communist Party tells them to. That could change the course of not just one election, but our entire country.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Liz. And let me just add one other component to this. And we don't have numbers for this. I don't think the numbers are as big, but they're significant. The added problem is this problem of surrogacy. So you have these companies in China that get wealthy, members of the CCP businessmen to hire American women to be surrogates to carry their children for them. So you'll have a Chinese billionaire who will pay an American woman $50,000 to be injected with their sperm, carry the child. The child is born, then the child is picked up, oftentimes not by the parents, picked up by a third party, and then returned back to China. We don't know how widespread this is, but the Wall Street Journal just 3 or 4 weeks ago had a front page story, Liz, about one man, a Chinese billionaire close to the CCP, who has over 100 children
Are those
that are
American
US
citizen children?
citizens.
Ugh.
Yeah, 100 children born this way. And because they're born in the US and the birth mother is an American citizen, the child is automatically granted citizenship. We did a little research, Liz. We found just in Southern California 107 Chinese owned surrogacy companies. So we don't know the scale of it, but that's an additional problem in this space.
That is crazy. Listen, I remember a couple months ago, and I forget what I forget who published this. I forget what publication printed this. There was a story about a Chinese couple that were older than childbearing years, and they had a house full of like 20 or 25 children.
Yeah.
And when they were asked, when Child Protective Services asked why they had so many children via surrogacy, they were just like, "Oh, we love children." And it was really weird and didn't seem to be at all reflective of the truth. Would that be part of this?
That's absolutely part of it. No, that's a great example. In that particular case, that gentleman is a high-ranking CCP official who's originally from the Uyghur region in China.
Oh,
He has, probably $100 million of real estate in the United States, but primarily lives in China. He had, according to health and welfare people that showed up at this compound, he had 26 children there. From ages of like 2 to 3 up to age 12. And they were all his. And by the way, they're all U.S. citizens that he can take back to China whenever he wants, but they're going to have the right to vote. They're going to have the right to do a whole host of things. So this is what we mean by weaponized immigration. They are exploiting our immigration system and manipulating it in a way that creates a very real national security threat.
yeah. I mean, if you have a million voters essentially captured because they're going to be indoctrinated by the CCP, they're going to be coerced. If they vote absentee, they're not filling out their own ballots over there. You have essentially captured US elections. Like, you're going to be running the country just based on those. If you spread out those votes into, geographical locations where they will tip the scales, you've taken over the country.
That's right. And look, there's a lot of states where all you need to do is establish residency by having a local address, and you can do it as little as a week before an election. So you could decide, and this has been found in a couple of places, you could have an apartment where you have 15, maybe 20 foreign nationals claiming that as their residence. And they can vote in election if they have U.S. citizenship. So it's a huge problem. It's an electoral challenge, but it's also a challenge to this issue of the birthright citizenship. That's why I think it's so vital that the Supreme Court is taking this up. I have reason to believe that there are briefs being filed with the Supreme Court. They're going to be talking about the research in my book, raising this issue, because again, people think, somebody's here on vacation and they're pregnant and they happen to give birth and okay, what's the big harm? That's not the problem. It is widespread, wide scale, industrial in terms of what the Chinese are doing.
I think you're watching in real time my mind being changed about an issue, because I was always on the birthright citizenship issue. I was always like, okay, well, whether or not you agree with that, that's what's written in the Constitution. So if you want to change the Constitution, change it. But there are ways to do that. Don't try to twist the words and pretend they mean something else. Like, it is what it is. And I think you've changed my mind on this. I mean, if this is something that is being, not just can be, not just vulnerable to, but if it is being actively weaponized to take over our country, then we have to stop it. We have to change it. It has to end.
Yeah, I mean, Liz, I think part of it will come down to, I'm not an attorney, so I'm just going to give that caveat, but part of it comes down to this issue of under the jurisdiction thereof, right? That people are granted birthright citizenship under the jurisdiction thereof, and the question is, if you are a Chinese couple that flies into the United States for 3 weeks, a week before she gives birth, and 2 weeks later, you fly back to China, and the child doesn't live here at all, ever, until they're 18 and they decide to activate that person. Is that person really subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? I think common sense would say no, they're not. So why would that person be granted citizenship? But we'll see what the legal arguments are. But I'm similar to you. I kind of assume that this was not a wide scale problem. It absolutely is. It's being
Yeah.
exploited by the Chinese. There are other people that are certainly aware of this. There are other services that provide this for Indian couples, for Russian couples, fly them in. It's called birth tourism,
Mhm.
and the tourism industry in that space, at least, is booming.
Yeah, and I think I just didn't realize the extent of it. I thought it was something that a few elites here and there did, and it wasn't right. But man, as a weapon, an immigration weapon. Talk to me about this is actually an American citizen who is residing in Shanghai, China. I assume having been given permission by the Chinese Communist Party, because you can't just you or I, Peter, couldn't just go to China and live there if we wanted to. We would have to be given permission. The person that I'm talking about is Neville Roy Singham, this American citizen who is an avowed communist. He loves the Chinese communists. He shares an office with the Chinese communist propaganda firm. He's been cited at their propaganda conferences carrying a notebook, a red notebook with a hammer and a sickle on it. He was part of, radical, actually black communist and Marxist groups here in the United States before he fled. We exposed him last summer as being one of the big funders, indirectly through this kind of nebulous web of innocuously named leftist groups. One of the big funders of the violent riots that we've seen in the United States, whether it's on college campuses, in the name of pro-Hamas, quote unquote, free Palestine, Students for Justice in Palestine he funds, whether it's the Party of Socialism and Liberation, a big organizer out in the LA area for those riots. But talk to me about what you have reported additionally on him in this book, because I know my audience, we were among the first to be talking about him. So they're very eager for the new information that you're bringing.
Yeah, well, thank you, Liz, and you've done great reporting on this issue. I first ran into Roy Singham when I was researching my previous book, Blood Money, and we actually put him on the cover. And people would say, "I recognize all these people except this guy," and I said, "Well, that's Neville Roy Singham," and I explained who he is, and you've done that as well. I mean, this is a guy who built a tech firm in the United States. He was an avowed Marxist, which is kind of weird that you're a Marxist and a businessman. But anyway, he was. He sold that business to an investment fund in London and made $1 billion personally off of that deal. What's interesting about the investment firm that bought him, they bought his company, by the way, is that investment firm is partly owned by China's sovereign wealth fund, which is their government investment fund. So Neville Roy Singham now has $1 billion. He decides, I'm going to go live in Shanghai. That's where I want to live. Anywhere on the planet I can live, I'm going to go and live in Shanghai. He does. He's friendly with the CCP. He's funneled more than $100 million into a network that includes a group called the People's Forum in New York. Now, you remember earlier, Liz, I was talking about this Mexican member of Congress who said he was organizing the militancy and meeting and speaking to groups. He actually went and spoke at the People's Forum in New York
Of course
about
he
the
did.
ability of migrants from Mexico to work jointly with radicals like Antifa. So there is a kind of a merging of interests here. And you're quite right. Singham favors violent radical change in the United States. And he's done it overseas in other countries where, he's been identified as a national security threat, like India, for example. So this is a real problem. And again, it shows how immigration has been weaponized, because the breeding ground for a lot of these radical movements. Yes, in Minneapolis, we see, the 50-year-old lady, blowing her whistle, and we see the radicals. But a big part of this movement are immigrants, and they have been radicalized in their home countries. They come to the United States, and in the United States, their goal is to continue to spread and to perpetuate the revolution. That's why we need to have an absolute vigorous process of vetting people that we even allow to come here on a visa. Because when you look at, for example, some of the religion visas, the R1 visas, particularly in the Islamic space, the vast majority of radical imams that are preaching at mosques in the United States they're not Americans. They come here on these R1 visas and they talk about going to war against Western civilization. They talk about tearing down the United States. And we've got to get smart about this, or we are going to be looking ultimately, I think, at the collapse of the United States in the not too distant future. It's going to get that bad.
Listen, and meanwhile, while radical imams are coming here and preaching the downfall of our country, Catholic priests who are coming here as missionaries are being sent back to their home countries because they can't get their visas renewed. The system is completely messed up. Listen, Peter, I don't know if I ever told you this before. I might have told you the last time we spoke. I think the last time we saw each other was at that Heritage event a couple years ago.
Yes.
And we did that that interview on stage. And I forget if I told you this or not, but something that you do in your books has served as an inspiration for something I've done in my books now, which is at the very end to prescribe a solution to the problems that you expose. And I've always thought that you have done that very well, because you don't take an entire half book to do that. You just say, listen, this is the intricacy of the problem and here's how it can easily be fixed. And I think that's one of the reasons, beside your reporting, why your books are such effective. It's not just a message, it's actually a political change that you are affecting here. And so I know you have to go quickly. I'm going to keep you for an extra 2 minutes because I want to hear what government officials should do about the weaponization of our immigration system.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Liz. And I've always admired your work on the podcast and in your books. The solutions are simple. Now, some of them require congressional action, which is not so simple. But among the things I talk about is we need to end the practice of dual citizenship. You need to be an American citizen. You should not be an American and a Chinese citizen, or American and a Mexican citizen. I think it's a question of where is your heart, where is your commitment. So that's one of the things I call for. The other thing I call for is a radical overhaul of our visa system and the way that we use it. We have a problem with people getting quote unquote permanent resident status in the United States by buying their way into the country through the EB-5 program. Many of these people are manipulating our system. If they get permanent resident status, they can donate to political campaigns. They're doing that to try to shift the base in this country. So we need to overhaul the visa program, and I discuss how to do that. The third thing we need to do is stop doing stupid things. I mean, one of the things I mentioned in the book is we right now in the United States are training hundreds of Chinese pilots at private flight schools, some of whom are going to be flying for the People's Liberation Army Air Force, squaring off against our pilots. That's ridiculous. I thought we learned from 9/11. We don't want adversarial people in our flight schools. So that should be a quick fix as well. But there are things we can do. I would tell people, don't get overwhelmed with the problems we face. They are real. They are massive, but there are solutions, and you've got to have faith that there is a path forward. And I believe that there is.
Again, your books are some of my favorites of all time. I never miss one of them. Guys, go get Peter Schweizer's new book. We'll put the cover on the screen for you one more time. Peter, I could talk to you for hours. I know you're a busy man. It's book launch week, so we're going to let you go. But thank you for being on the show. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks so much for having me, Liz. Take care.
Of course. Okay, guys, The Invisible Coup by Peter Schweizer was out yesterday. How American elites and foreign powers use immigration as a weapon. It's really mind-blowing. Really, truly mind-blowing to hear how coordinated of an apparatus the Mexican government has, using their consulates to actually coordinate the domestic civil unrest in our country. And then this Chinese plot to use birth tourism and surrogacy to create new American citizens that aren't really Americans. They're just born here. They get birthright citizenship. They are taken back to Chinese mainland, indoctrinated into communists. Then when they turn 18, they are deployed to vote to take over our elections. It is shocking. You know that I think very carefully on this show before I change my mind about an issue. And there's not too many issues that I've radically changed my mind on in the past few years, but I think you watched in real time my mind being changed on birthright citizenship, because if we don't stop the Chinese from doing that, then we have lost our country. They will control the outcome of every single election forever. If they control the outcome of every single election, then they control us. It's absolutely shocking. Make sure you get Peter's book. Your comments on Ilhan Omar were cracking me up. I want to get to some of them here in just a second, but I want to thank today's sponsor, All Family Pharmacy. Listen, I am very careful about who I partner with, especially when it comes to healthcare. All Family Pharmacy is a partner I genuinely trust. When you don't want to wait a week to see a doctor to prescribe what you normally use, medication that works for you, you need all family pharmacy. When everyone around you is sick, which I think is this time of year right now, and you want to be prepared, you need all family pharmacy. When your doctor treats you like you're asking for classified documents just because you want ivermectin, you need all family pharmacy. This is not a corporate chain pharmacy that sends you annoying texts about getting the vax all the time. This is a family-owned business with licensed doctors who actually listen to you instead of gaslighting you. You get fast approvals on your medication requests, and then your medication is delivered right to your door. They have over 300 different medication options, from antibiotics to ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, mebendazole, and more. It's simple and straightforward to use. Highly recommend that you check them out. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz. If you use my code Liz10, you will save 10% on your next order. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz. Use code Liz10 to save 10% on your next order. Okay, let's get to some of these comments. I saw them flying in when I was talking to Peter, but fascinating and kind of shocking and horrifying. But let's go back to Ilhan Omar for a moment. So Ilhan Omar, was this attack real? Was this attack fake? Was this Jussie Smollett 2.0? Because Ilhan Omar's behavior during that so-called attack seemed about as realistic as Jussie Smollett being jumped at 2 a.m. outside a subway in downtown Chicago by two mega hat-wearing thugs yelling, "This is mega country." There just were some elements that were a little incongruent, starting with, of course, her seeming head nod. She seemed to nod her head as if to signal this assailant, go ahead, launch your attack, at the moment that she was saying that Kristi Noem should be fired. That's just a very coincidental moment. Then, of course, when the assailant sprayed her with some unknown substance, it looked like from a syringe, she barely flinched. I mean, this could be a toxic poison chemical agent. She could have gotten burned. You don't know what it is. Could have made her go blind. Could have made her sick. Could have made her pass out. And yet, what did she do? Nothing really. And then she lunged toward him. I mean, you might expect a Navy SEAL in that circumstance to lunge towards an assailant, but I hardly think Ilhan Omar has the training of an operator that would lead her to do that. That's just the antithesis of kind of human nature, self-preservation. Seems very strange. So let's see. I want to read some of your guys' comments. Gwen says, clearly the nod gave him the clue to go. Nora says, probably staged because they need acting lessons. And yeah, Nels says, why would you run towards your attacker? Medi says, Jussie Smollett 2.0. Yeah, I think so. So it seems like most of us are thinking the same way. Oh, this is actually a really good point. Pool Paul says, since when do they presume a toxic substance was used and not clear the room? Actually, that's a point that I had not heard before. You're right, because it wouldn't, if it was a toxic substance, it wouldn't just be dangerous for Ilhan Omar. It would have put her staff in danger, her security in danger, the police in danger, all of the attendees in danger, especially if it was something that they could smell. That's an excellent point. Excellent point. Brian says staged. She went right towards him. Clint says front row, first seat. Yeah, that one was weird to me too, especially because he was visibly, I mean, he was under the influence of something, because that was not normal behavior and facial expressions. Oh, interesting. Dave, did not confirm this, but this will be interesting to try to confirm. Dave says she never changed her clothes the entire day, for starters. Is that true? Did she not change that outfit after the event for the rest of her public appearances that day? We'll have to look into that. I don't know if that's true, but if it is true, that's very interesting. Clint says he will get paid from the Leering Center. Good one. Very good one. Yes, it's me, says the green light was Kristi Noem's name. He kept his arm low not to hit her in the face. Yeah, that was a little bit weird to me too. Usually, I mean, an attacker goes for what's going to harm the person that their victim the most, which would be the face. Oh, interesting. Quiet Requiem says, yet on January 6th, she cowed and developed PTSD from her fear. She was so traumatized, she said she could barely talk. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a little bit of a discrepancy between how she reacted on January 6th and how she reacted now. Brad says, fake, fake, fake. Fake, fake, fake. Okay, so I'm not saying definitively that it's fake. We don't know if it's fake. Time will tell whether it's fake or not. I'm glad he was arrested. If he assaulted a sitting member of the U.S. Congress, he should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Even if we don't like Ilhan Omar's policies or anything else about her, that doesn't matter. That's the difference between Democrats and Republicans. When a crime is committed against a Democrat member of Congress, we on the right still think that attacker should be prosecuted. So if it was real, he should be prosecuted. He should be sent to jail. And he should be sent to jail if it was fake, because you cannot perpetuate hoax hate crimes. So really, arrest and investigation is the best course of action here. We will find out the truth sooner or later. The left, of course, is going to try to paint him as a Trump supporter, paint him as an immigration restrictionist, in order to vilify the Trump administration's mass deportation effort. Was not a coincidence. That's the other oddity about this whole thing, is just the timing was just a little bit too perfect to be able to use something like this to vilify Trump supporters in order to prop up, well, the person in the United States government who is the most likely to have committed immigration fraud. And that is, of course, Ilhan Omar. We don't know if the attack was fake, but we do know her citizenship is fake, and that it should also be under investigation, because she obtained her citizenship invalidly, and therefore she should be kicked out. She should be sent back to Somalia. All right. Thank you guys for watching today. Thank you for listening. Make sure you buy Peter Schweizer's book. It is worth the read every time. The man never disappoints. You can find it everywhere books are sold. Just look up his name. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.